What's the point in giving players no move clauses when they always end up getting asked to waive them anyways? Let's talk today about a guy in Edmonton who has a no move clause. Darnell Nurse, everybody, is an overpaid defenseman in the Oilers organization that I think a lot of folks have started to open themselves up to the idea of him getting traded. This season, next season, whenever season, he has a no-move clause for the 2026-2027 season, and he ends up getting a modified no-trade for the next 3 years after this upcoming year. Darnell Nurse is a guy that, by all accounts, would be in charge of his destiny if he were to get moved. But with that said, I wanted to talk about one of the quote-unquote underrated trade destinations that Darnell Nurse could potentially head over to. Maybe for him, it's not really the most underrated thing, it's just a flat-out bad thing. But in the scope of the NHL, I do think this is worth talking about. Let's dive into this post made by Nav Dosanjh on Twitter 2 days ago. Nav is a Canucks fan, and they went out there and said this: "I'm not sure it's possible, but if the Vancouver Canucks can trade Filip Hronek to either the San Jose Sharks or the Chicago Blackhawks for their first-round picks at either 2nd or 4th overall, and if the Canucks end up drafting 2 possible studs at number 3 and with the other first, they could then use that cap space to take on a bad contract like Darnell Nurse for another first-round pick." Now, is Darnell Nurse a guy who would waive his no-move clause to come to the Vancouver Canucks? I think reasonable ideas would say no. You know, this is a guy that's uber competitive. He's made the playoffs every year the past 6-7 seasons it's been for the Edmonton Oilers. Actually, no, I don't think this year counts. No, they lost in the play-in series, I believe. Yeah, no. Scratch that. The last 6 seasons, you can say. The Oilers made the finals twice in a row. Darnell Nurse was out there playing a pivotal role and getting a lot of minutes in the process. Say what you want about him being good, him being bad. It's all over the place with this guy. But he was a reasonably used defenseman as the Edmonton Oilers made the finals in back-to-back seasons. This would essentially be a guy who wants to redeem himself and who wants to get a Stanley Cup, right? That's what most players who have played in Edmonton the past 2 years want to do. So why would he waive his no-move clause to come to the Vancouver Canucks? Well, wouldn't a proper answer to that question be because they asked him to? I don't know about you, but I feel like no-move clauses these days don't really have as much power as they did once upon a time. A long time ago, you would see players get no-move clauses and it was well, they are going to stay. Nothing is going to happen to pry this player away from the team that he is on right now. But in the past few years, I'm thinking of the Andrei Kuzmenkos of it all. I'm thinking about some of these other guys who were forced to waive, not because they were threatened, but because they just didn't want to be on a team that actually had the wherewithal to ask them to leave in the first place. There's a big element of pride that seems to be taking place with these NHL players. And for Andrei Kuzmenko in particular, he did have trade protection when he got sent over to Calgary, but his mindset was, hey, they asked me to move, so I'll move. I have the right to say no and to reject it, but I'm not going to do that. It's not 2017. I'm not Louis Eriksson going out there and preventing the Canucks from making a trade with the Oilers because I don't want to go to Edmonton. No, I don't want to be on a team that already wants me out. I feel like that sentiment has propelled itself forward in the forefront of many NHL players over the years. And so while I do think it's very reasonable to say, hey, why would Darnell Nurse waive for a team like Vancouver? I do also think it's reasonable for a guy like Nurse to waive really wherever it is that he gets asked to waive to, as long as he gets asked to be waived in the first place. Does that make sense? I don't know if I'm really hammering the point down home here, but this idea of Vancouver taking on Darnell Nurse and his bad contract at $925 million a year, Because it goes on till the end of 2030, because it's a long-term deal, and because it's an anchor of a contract, this is exactly what we had spoken about earlier this week on the YouTube channel when we dove into those Ryan Johnson comments about the Vancouver Canucks potentially weaponizing their cap space and making sure that they can actually utilize the available cap opportunities at hand. We already saw with this owner, there have been conversations about, Francesco Aquilini doesn't want to pay players to not play for him. He doesn't want to pay executives to not work for him. Well, guess what? That's what Francesco Aquilini is doing right now with Adam Foote and all of Adam Foote's coaching staff. Those guys got the can, and then the Sedins are going to go out there and hire another head coach. More money coming out of the owner's pocket. Everything that the owner wanted to happen is not happening. Evan Gold wasn't hired. Ryan Johnson was promoted. The AGMs are still here, and so are the scouts. It seems like the Vancouver Canucks, especially when you think about what Ryan Johnson said the other day, it seems like the Canucks might actually be in a position to utilize their cap space and weaponize it. Is it 5 years too late? Probably. We are in a rising cap era. The money that all these teams are allowed to spend is going up, which doesn't really help Vancouver when you think about them wanting to weaponize their cap space. This ain't the flat cap environment that we were used to when COVID started. But what I do think this does is it puts Vancouver in a really interesting spot. If other NHL teams are looking at the Vancouver Canucks and they're saying, yeah, if we need to get our cap sorted out, if we need to free up a contract or something, maybe Vancouver is our destination, whether it is a Darnell Nurse-like asset that comes over or some other big-name bum that isn't living up to the contract, who knows? But there is an opportunity for Vancouver to potentially help out a team like Edmonton for the ripe old price of a first-round draft pick. The Oilers' first this year is not actually theirs. It's San Jose's 20th overall. Yes, that's right. The San Jose Sharks have the Edmonton Oilers' first-round pick. But if you take a look at it, the Oilers do have some other firsts in their repertoire. They've got the 2028 first. They've got the 2029 first. They traded away this year's first for Jake Wallman. They traded away next year's first for Jason Dickinson and Colton Dach. That was the Andrew Mangiapane trade. That was essentially what the Canucks would be interested in doing if they were to take on a guy like Darnell Nurse. It's Mangiapane and a conditional first-round pick because Mangiapane was seen as such a negative asset. The Oilers needed to attach a first to get that trade to go through. If Filip Hronek goes to a team like Chicago or San Jose, I think he helps them out tremendously. Is he worth the first round pick that would follow in that conversation, a second or a fourth overall pick? Honestly, I'm not sure, but the fact that we have had enough people talking about that being the price makes me excited as to what it is Filip Hronek could get in one of these trade-like scenarios. But if you trade away Hronek, you fill in that roster spot with Darnell Nurse, who is, by all accounts, a good pro. He's just not good on the ice. Then maybe there is some value maximizing and dollar to tangible asset maxing that you can see the Vancouver Canucks execute here, as long as this trade plan that Ryan Johnson has actually continues to prosper. So with all that said, you can let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. How do you feel about this idea? Trading away Filip Hronek to San Jose or Chicago for the second or the fourth overall pick, drafting two guys at the top of the draft, and then using the extra cap space to take on a bad contract like Darnell Nurse, for example. Thoughts in the comment section. Do you think it makes sense? Do you think it's possible? I hope you enjoyed this video. Sign on. And bye.